Good morning, everybody. It's my birthday. Okay, it was yesterday. But you know what? When you reach a certain age, you get to start changing the rules on how the world operates, and you get to make your own rules. And when you get to be about 35, your birthday lasts a week, okay? Rachel, you'll know, because you're gonna be 35 too someday. Someday. And when you get to be 35, you get to tell people about your birthday on your birthday. Yesterday, I told everyone about my birthday. I went to Ready Go. I'm like, hey, it's my birthday. She's like, all right. I went to get gas. Hey, it's my birthday. I was messaging people on Facebook. Hey, just so you know, it's my birthday. We know, we wish you a happy birthday on your wall. I know, but you didn't leave an exclamation point. If you wish someone a Facebook happy birthday, you have to leave an exclamation point or just kind of like happy birthday, right? This is the world of emojis, people, all right? You have to leave an exclamation point. You're learning something from the pastor right away. We're 2 minutes in the sermon, okay? Write this down. Now, there's some other things that I've learned about birthdays and life as I've gotten a little bit older. I've got 7 other things. Can I tell you those 7 other things? Of course I can, because it's my birthday. Number 1, when you get older, you are not as funny as you think you are. Just kidding, you are totally as funny as you think you are and more. So keep telling your dumb jokes. Because even if the world doesn't like them, you know they're good, okay? Number 2, you stop caring if people don't laugh at your jokes or don't take your advice, because you are funny, gosh darn it, and you are wise, and it doesn't matter if people don't laugh or get your advice. You're right. You are right and you are funny, okay? Write this down. Number 3, when you get older, you understand if you want to dress like you are 20, you better be in the same physical shape you used to be when you were 20, because this jacket don't button. It don't, okay? I know. Number 4, when you get older, you realize you really just can't eat whatever you want, right? Unfortunately. On the other hand, you don't care when people tell you that. You can't eat all that pizza for breakfast. Shut up, don't tell me, I'm a grown man, right? Right? I'll eat the pizza I want to eat. Cold, hot. If it fell on the floor, I don't care. I'm a man, okay? Number 5, when you get older, you lose the fear of getting old. You remember that fear you used to have like when you were 20? You're like, oh my God, someday I'm gonna be 30. Oh, remember? You remember that? You're like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen to me? I'm gonna be so old. Like when you get older, like you're already there, okay? So you stop being afraid of that. Like your stuff ain't working like it used to. You got body parts that don't do what you tell it to. You got ointments and creams and antibiotics and powders and stuff, right? Like you got all that stuff. And then you realize that Lawrence Welk is actually a really good show. You're like, dang, this is entertaining. I never knew that before. It's good stuff. It's good stuff. Number 6, when you get older, you realize that the best generation of music that there ever was a generation of music that was around when you were a teenager, right? Like my parents love the 60s music, and some of your parents may like the 80s music. How about my 90s kids? 90s music, right? Right on? Now, I want you to know that I'm representing the 90s kids up here because I'm falling back on that church like a hellified gangster lean, getting funky on the mic like an old batch of collard greens. Right? Right? Am I right? I mean, I could keep going, but this is church, and that's the only lines in the song that are okay for church. Lord help us. And 7, finally, when you get older, you take a certain pleasure that age is coming for all those tight-skinned young people too. And pretty soon they're gonna be asking you what creams and ointments and antibiotics and powders that they should be using, because they got the same body parts working, not working, that you got not working. And what you're gonna do is hand them a little sip of your prune juice while you smile, right? Right? Rachel. So it's my birthday. But most importantly, it's our birthday at Altered Church. And we are still a little baby church. We're still just a little baby, and we're still learning stuff. And I've learned a ton of stuff, and I'm sure you have too. And I could probably make a list of 100 things that I've learned. But I would just like to make one statement to best summarize what we've learned here at our church. And as we have existed as a church, and we move forward as a church, it is all about Jesus. It's all about Jesus. Always, only Jesus. Can you say that with me? Always, only Jesus. That's right. It's that simple. It really is that simple. But we have to know Jesus to make it about Jesus. And this is why we are spending so much time talking about the love of God in September, because Jesus is the embodiment of God's love. But as we said, and as we've been saying the last few weeks, God's love is a little bit different than what we are used to. As we talked about last week and the week before, love as we define it, as we commonly define love, is all about emotions and endorphins. Love, as we define it, is pretty much always about us, our feelings and our desires and our concerns and our needs. The problem is, the way we define love is 100% different than how God defines love. The way we define love, or the way God defines love, almost has nothing to do ever with our feelings and emotions and endorphins. Now, that's not to say that God's love won't make us feel a certain way or produce certain emotions. I promise you that it will, but the feeling isn't the aim. The feeling is the result. The feeling isn't the aim. The feeling is the result. And I'm convinced that if we can do our best to define and understand the love of God, it will make a dramatic impact in how we live and how we engage in our two most important relationships, which is number one, our vertical relationship with who? God, and our horizontal relationship with the other people that God has placed in our lives. But as we've been saying, the stakes are high. Because if we get this right, we will live our best life. We will discover our true identity. All of our relationships will be enriched. We'll become more generous and more graceful and more peaceful and more content, bold and more courageous and more capable of being the person that God wants us to be. But if we don't get this right, we will live lives of mediocrity. Lives of mediocrity. We will struggle to find our purpose. We will allow others to determine our identity. We will be aimless. We'll be full of pride and self-centered, and we'll be full of greed and foolishness. And I know this probably, if you're here for the first time and you're hearing this, it might sound harsh, it might sound extreme, but as I said last week, the Bible says, the scriptures say that God is love. Literally, God's nature is best defined in that one word, love. So if we don't understand what that word means, and if we don't seek to understand the answer, we will never understand the most important parts of our nature. We will never understand what it truly means to be human. Because each of us is created in the image of who? In the image of God. And if God is love and we were created in his image, we have to know what love is. Otherwise, we're not gonna know who he is and who we are, and we will struggle and feel displaced because of it. So this series we've been going through since the first week in September, Love on the Line, is about discovering the love of God and how we should define it, what it means about our identity, and how we can use it to make a difference in the world. Now this morning we're gonna focus on Matthew chapter 8 in a story you may have heard called the story of the faith of the centurion. And this morning I wanted to give you some sermon notes paper. And this week, the format's gonna be a little bit different, so there's nothing to fill in there. It's just a blank piece of paper. I thought it was gonna be, what's it called, the thick stuff? Cardstock. It's not, it's regular paper. I'm really sorry. Next week it'll be cardstock, but you can still write things on it, right? Put it on the person's back in front of you if you need something to support. They'll be okay with that. We love each other here, right? It's all about always only Jesus, okay? So it's okay. All right, but we're gonna jump into this text. So when Jesus had entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him, asking for help. Lord, he said, my servant lies at home, paralyzed, suffering terribly. Understand, as we read these verses, Jesus is talking to a man who's a centurion, who was part of the Roman war machine. The Jewish people hated the Romans. The Romans were occupiers, and no one who was a Jewish person liked them. So understand, it's very odd for this man to approach Jesus, and especially to approach him and call him Lord. That's just very bizarre. It's something worth taking note of. Nevertheless, he comes to Jesus and says, my servant is sick. My servant is suffering. He needs your help. In verse 7, Jesus says to him, I shall come and heal him. Or shall I come and heal him? Jesus asks this question. Again, there are cultural considerations here. Jesus, by the laws of the Jewish people, would not have been permitted to enter the centurion's house. It would have caused a scandal. People would have said, why is he going into that place? He's going to be defiled. It would have caused all sorts of scandal and accusations, but he's willing. He says, I'll go. I will go. Should I go to heal this person? But the centurion replied, Lord, I do not deserve to have you come under my roof. But just say the word and my servant will be healed. For I myself have a man under authority with soldiers under me. I'll tell this one, go, and he goes. And that one, come, and he comes. And I say to my servant, do this, and he does it. And I think the centurion, he knows that Jesus' presence would cause scandal. He also has a great deal of respect for Jesus, and he has a humble heart. And so he makes this statement. He says, I know that when I order something to be done, it will be done, because I am a man that is in power. I have influence and authority, and I know that you can do the same thing. So just say the word, and he'll be healed. Say the word, and he will be healed. He doesn't, notice he doesn't make a request or ask a question. He doesn't say, can you? He said, do you think you might be able to? He says, I know you have the power to heal him. Now, you don't have to come near. You don't have to come to my house. You can do it from anywhere. You can do it from Ashtabula. You can do it from Tennessee or Timbuktu. You can do it from Painesville. You can do it from Galilee. You can do it wherever you want to, but please, I know you can heal my servant. When Jesus heard this, he was amazed. Amazed. And he said to those following him, truly, I tell you, I have not found anyone in Israel with such great faith. Now, Jesus is amazed at his faith because the people who are supposed to have faith, the Jewish people, don't have faith. And this person who shouldn't have faith, this person who shouldn't know who Jesus is, the person who shouldn't make this bold declaration, does have faith. He does believe. He does make this bold declaration. And then in verse 13, Jesus says, go, let it be done just as you believed it would. And his servant was healed at that moment. Now, Jesus rewarded the man for his faith, and this continues this theme that we see throughout the New Testament, that Jesus pours blessings out on faith. Our belief is a catalyst for God's work and blessing. Our belief is a catalyst for God's work and blessing. But notice something else here. Now, it's a clear result of this man's faith that the servant is healed. Again, belief equals blessing, but there's more than that. Remember that this man was a soldier, but he was a Roman, and Jesus would, and all the other Jews would call him a Gentile. And anyone who's not Jewish is a Gentile, which means most of us here would be called Gentiles. Jewish people didn't hang out with Gentiles. They didn't talk to them. They didn't go to their houses. It was against the law. So what Jesus was doing here was radically inclusive. Radically inclusive. He was showing this man that God's love was for him, that God wanted him, that God desired him. And he was also showing his disciples that God's love was for people that they would think that were never worthy of it. And he was also teaching them that love, or God's love, was much broader than they could have ever known, much broader than they could ever imagined, and it's gonna make them uncomfortable as they love people. And by extension, as we read this, we know he's teaching us, the church, that we have to break out of our pockets and preferences of sameness and include others in our circle of community and family. Because I think that church people, and really all people, we kind of like to be by ourselves with the people who are kind of like us, right? That's just kind of how we are, right? Young people want to be with young people. And ladies sometimes like to be with ladies, and guys the same. And we like to stick with people that are like us. This happens all over the church. This happens all over the world, in every club, in every Facebook group. Like, it's just the way it goes, okay? And what Jesus is saying is you have to break out of that. You have to be inclusive. You have to include people you normally wouldn't into your family of faith. Now, I think in our 3 years of being a church that we've done a pretty good job of that. Do you think that we've done okay? Like we've done okay? Okay. Do you think we've done okay? Okay, all right. Now, what I can say is that we still got to grow a little, right? Or maybe a lot. But I think the tendency in the church, as I said, is to segregate by race or theology or preference or age or social construct. And we aren't perfect, but we've started to break those chains. That's something that we want to do really well, and I think we're making progress. So pat yourself on the back. You could give yourself I can't, my shirt's too tight, I can't get back there. But you probably can, and turn to your neighbor and say, good job. Good job. There's some people in the middle didn't turn to their neighbor. I'm looking at you. Go ahead, turn to them, say, good job. Good job. You can't be inclusive if you can't turn your head and say, good job. This is step one. Just turn it and say, good job, good job, good job. Oh, it's getting better. I see a few more. Good job. Maybe the person in front. Hey, good job up there. Good job. The person behind you, hey, I don't know how to turn my head. I'm getting older, so my neck doesn't move good, but good job back there, right? Good. We got some exercise today. So this is good. We want to keep this up, moving ahead in our 4th year as a church, but I think that there is more that we can do, okay? And what I want to do is I want to go back to Matthew chapter 8, but I want to back up, okay? Because we started in verse 5, I think. I want to go back to verse 1, and I want to go backwards in the text a little bit, and I want to read Matthew chapter 8, verse 1. The story's a little different. When Jesus came down from the mountainside, the large crowds followed him. A man with leprosy came and knelt before him and said, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. And again, we're going backwards here. This is back at verse 1. And this man approaches Jesus with this disease called leprosy. And this condition is gruesome. It's difficult to look at because there would be bandages and open sores. It was very contagious. Oftentimes, you lose the nerve endings in your fingers. So if you weren't careful, you'd lose your fingers because you'd slam them in drawer. It's just a terrible situation. It's also terribly contagious. So this is a disease of exclusion. If you had leprosy, the law required you to announce your presence when you went into public. So as you went into a town or a village to get food or medicine, whatever you needed, you literally had to yell the word, unclean. Unclean. That's what you were saying as you walked into the village, and you did this so people had the chance to run away. So this man with leprosy, and anyone like him, would have been totally cut off and cut out from the religious and social life of the community. This is not a great feeling. Do you like having friends? Of course. You like spending time with people? Of course you do. You like talking to people and having conversations and being near people? Of course you do. Imagine that you had none of those relationships. Not a good feeling. Not a good feeling. Now, we don't get a ton of detail from this text, but we would imagine that as this man approached Jesus, he would have called out, unclean! And everyone would have scattered, and there was Jesus. He stayed put. And so this man with leprosy, he bows down. And like the centurion, this man did not make a request, but he said, if you are willing, I know you can. If you are willing, you can do something about this. If you're willing to be involved in someone like me, I know you have the ability to change my life, every part of it, all of it. I know you can do that. But notice what he asked Jesus specifically. He didn't say, heal me. He said, make me clean. Now, healing is about the disease, okay? He wanted more than the disease to go away. The man wanted to be cleansed. This man who had to walk around telling everyone how unclean he was wanted that stigma to be gone. He wanted to be included in the community again. He wanted to be transformed. He wanted Jesus to change everything about him, restore his dignity and his humanity. That's what he wanted. Now, I love what Jesus does here. This is probably my favorite verse in the Bible. When I was a new Christian, I couldn't read this without crying. It says, Jesus reached out his hand, and what's he do? What's he do? What's he do? He touches this man. Now understand, this man hasn't been touched by anyone in years. Not a handshake, not a tap on the shoulder, not the warmth of a hug. And that's probably the worst part of this disease, is the coldness of an existence without human affection. Anybody here like to hug? I'm a hugger. I like to hug. Anybody do, like, you're more like a fist bump kind of person? Okay. Handshake. Shake a hand, little hand sanitizer. Shake it, shake a hand, okay. Tap on the shoulder, okay. I know there's a couple guys here, a little butt tap, good game, that like to do that. So we enjoy physical affection. It's part of who we are. We need this. It's like this thing that happens, and this endorphins go off, and it says, I care about you. He didn't have this. And I think Jesus knew this. And although he could have healed him from Ashtabula or Tennessee or Timbuktu or Painesville or Afghanistan or Africa, he touched this man. And he says, I am willing. I'm willing. I love you, even though you're cast aside, even though all these other people have ran away. They're all over there hiding, and I'm going to touch you because I love you. And I love you even though no one else will. I love you even though you've given up hope, and it took your last bit of courage and boldness and faith to come to me. I'm willing. Be clean. Be clean. And he was healed. His heart was mended. He would have been included into the faith community and the social community, totally transformed. And that's what the love of Jesus does. Always, only Jesus. Now, one thing we could miss here if we didn't know, some of the cultural dynamics going on here is that Jesus is touching this man was illegal. It would have transferred the man's disease onto Jesus and his ceremonial uncleanliness onto Jesus. So what Jesus does carries a risk. It would have been seen as scandalous, and Jesus doesn't care. Remember, when we talked about the centurion, how we said it would be taboo for Jesus to go to his house. He didn't take the extra step there. It wasn't needed, but he does here. He goes the whole way because he knew what that man needed was more than physical. It was holistic, head to toe, every molecule, every part of his soul and identity healing. And it impacted every part of him, what was wrong with him, and only touching him was gonna fix every part of him. And that's why Jesus touched him. Now, if it was inclusion that Jesus showed the centurion, it was something more here. It was inclusion, but more than inclusion, it was compassion. 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 Compassion is the word that Mark uses when he tells the same story. This story is in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, all in three of the four Gospels. And in Mark 1:41, it says that Jesus was moved with compassion. He stretched out his hand and touched him. Now, this Greek word, compassion, is spaknizomai. Spaknizomai. And it's more than care or sympathy. It's this deep sense of concern that literally means to stir your guts. Now, if you look at a Greek dictionary, the way that it words this is actually kind of funny. It says, to be moved in the bowels. It doesn't say to move the bowels, okay, that's different. It says to be moved in the bowels, which means stir the guts. It's that gut-wrenching feeling we have when someone is hurt, and it puts us into stress, and it drives us into action. We can't tolerate seeing it, so we have to do something about it. Spaknizomai. That's what Jesus did. That gut-wrenching feeling of sympathy drove him to take action. It's crazy because this word, spaknizomai, is used 12 times in the New Testament. And every time it's used, it's always talking about Jesus' compassion, and it's always followed by action. I'll write this down. Compassion is always followed by action. Compassion is always followed by action every single time without fail. So yes, inclusion is critical. There's no doubt about that. That is the radical minimum standard. We have to be inclusive. There's no two ways about it, because you can't be compassionate without first being inclusive. But we also have to understand that the love of God is more about compassion than inclusion. Now here's what I mean. Inclusion says, I'm cool with you. Compassion says, I'll die for you. Inclusion says you can share a meal with me. Compassion says you can share your heart with me. Inclusion says, I don't agree with you, but we can still be friends. And compassion says, I don't agree with you, but I'm gonna love you all the way. Just like you don't agree with me and you're gonna love me all the way, no matter what, through thick and thin, in Jesus' name, we're in this together. Amen. Inclusion says, we want everyone to come to this place to hear the gospel. Compassion says, we're gonna leave up out of these seats, find the people that God wants us to find, and we are gonna show them the gospel. Inclusion says, let's sit together. Compassion says, let's serve together. Let's heal together. Let's give together. Let's move out of these walls together. Inclusion says, let's wait together. Compassion says, let's go together. Now, we want inclusion from our church. It's the radical minimum standard, but we want more. We want compassion out of our church. It's in our mission statement to create a home for all people to thrive in the compassion of Christ. Spaknizomai. We want to create a place where everyone can know the gut-wrenching, passionate love of Jesus and experience the action that it calls us to, both in our hearts as it moves inside of us and in the people outside these walls who need that compassion, even if they don't know it. Because so many people struggle and they don't know why. They don't understand what they need is the compassion of Christ, and that's what we have to offer them. So everything that we do from this September on our birthday to next September on our birthday will be inspired by compassion. We will have a year of compassion that inspires action. And I want to share with you what I feel God has assigned to our church this year. This is something I've been praying about for about 6 weeks. And I've kept a little notebook. And I really feel that God has put 11 things on my heart. And can I share those with you? Of course I can. It's my birthday. We love you, Rachel. It's my birthday. Now, what I want you to do is consider writing these things down. And I want you to write them down because we want to hold each other accountable to these things, but also to understand that this only happens through all of us. In our 4th year, Altered Church will distribute 500 shoes in the community to children in need of shoes. Now last fall, I think it was Was it August? That wasn't fall, that was summer. It was August, was that August? I think we gave away 100 shoes. So we can do 5 times that, right? We can do 5 times that, right? Yes. Just kidding, scratch that out, write down 2,000 shoes. 2,000 shoes. And that's a big job, but you know, Crystal and Shay are gonna lead us in that. Can you guys stand up real quick? So, do you think with the help of the Holy Spirit and God's blessing that we can come up with 2,000 shoes? And you may say, well, where's 2,000 shoes gonna go? I don't know, they're gonna go to Painesville. And if kids in Painesville don't need them, then we'll send them to East Cleveland. And if kids in East Cleveland don't need them, then we'll send them to Ashtabula. I don't know, but we're gonna come up with some shoes. Church, can you get behind them? Can you get behind them? Okay. Number 2, on Sunday, December 22nd, PJ's Pancakes and Presents. And we're gonna come up with 5,000 toys. This year, we're gonna have this event on a Sunday instead of church. So we're gonna be in our pajamas, we're gonna have pancakes, and we're gonna have 5,000 presents and maybe a little bit more. Why do we need so many toys? Because number 3, we're gonna do a Christmas morning toy delivery in our community. Okay, we're gonna go to the neighborhoods that need toys and we're gonna hand them out, so we're gonna need a lot of toys, okay? And we're gonna do this in Painesville. But we're also gonna do this in Mexico, where our missionaries will hand deliver Christmas presents to some of the most impoverished people on our continent. And we're gonna need a lot of toys. We're gonna need a lot of help, and I know Mary Ness is involved, and Tammy's gonna do a big fundraiser, and Andrea, and Dina, and Dana, and they're gonna help. Can you guys stand up? Can you guys stand up? If you're here, I know some of you are here. Dina, can you stand up? Dana, can you stand up? Andrea, come on, don't be shy now, stand up. Can we get behind them? Now, we're not gonna be done with Cabo because we're gonna take a family mission trip to Cabo, Mexico. March 21st to 28th, we're gonna send 10 people to Cabo, Mexico on a mission trip to spend time with the Rupels and experience life as a missionary. And this trip will be open to anyone who wants to go. Again, I know this won't be easy. It's gonna take money, it's gonna take effort, it's gonna take planning, it's gonna take prayer, but I know that the Rupels are excited to see you guys. Do we have a little message from the Rupels?
Hey guys, we are super excited about you coming down here for that week. And we just know that God has some really awesome things in store for us. So we are already in prayer for the entire week, and we're looking forward to spending time with you and showing you what life is like here.
Estamos súper emocionados a tenerlos aquí, la familia de Oxford, and we're really looking forward to looking forward to having you guys here, seeing what God does in this ministry through Cabo Missions for Christ and through Altered Ministries. Ministry.
Can we give it up for those people that we love? Our young adults will also be in the mission field this year. We will be taking, or they will be, I'm too, look, it's my birthday, I can tell you, I'm too old to go, okay? But they'll be taking a mission trip to where Altered Church story began, and that's in New York City. And they're gonna go in July. Any young adults in here this morning? Can you guys stand up? You guys stand up? Can you guys do this? Church, can we get behind them? Yeah, we can get behind them. Because we're excited about youth in our church. We're excited there's people who are younger than me and other people. Number 7, we don't want to leave the youth ministry out, so we're going to get them involved with a growth retreat and 500 hours of volunteer service at Altered Church. Now, the size of our youth ministry is growing, but but we want to get them serving and connecting in the depth of their lives with Jesus. So this is really important. This maturity piece is important. So Colt, you got a big job ahead of you. Colt, can you stand up? Colt, can you do all this? Yeah. And where's your team at? Can the youth team stand up? Yeah. And do we have any teens in here? Any teens? Where you guys at? Oh. Can we get behind them, church? We want to provide opportunities for our adults, and so we're going to give you the opportunity to give 300 hours of volunteer time to Painesville City local schools. We already have the connection with Catalyst Ministry. We just need people to show up and say, I'm willing to help in the classroom. I'm willing to help a kid learn how to read. I'm willing to help a kid learn how to do math. I'm willing to just cut out stars with scissors because that's all I can do, but I just want to help. And all we need is people to say yes. Do we have people in here that can say yes to this? Do we have people that can get behind serving in Painesville City local schools in this community that God has put us in? Do we have people who can do that? Yeah. And number 9, we want to add 100 new members. And this doesn't mean add 100 people in attendance. It means 100 people that go through our next steps, because this is the mechanism where we teach you about the purpose that God has for you and how he wants to use you and how you can grow personally in this church and in your personal life with Christ. And I need you guys to help me with that and this next one too. Because number 10, we want to add 25 new Discover groups. Discover groups are our method of growing horizontally in our relationship with God and vertically in our relationships with each other. It's how we learn the scriptures. It's how we share our lives with one another. It's how we learn the beauty and the power of Christian community. And we need this. It's so critical to us. Now this last one, this is gonna be a big deal, and it's gonna require a lot of help. But number 11, we are finally going to have a multi-community, multi-ethnic, multi-neighborhood vacation Bible at Altar Church. And what I know is that we are gonna impact the lives of hundreds of kids through this. I know that's gonna happen because we got passionate people full of compassion here at this church. And I know we're gonna impact people. Where's my kids ministry people at? Any kids ministry teachers? Any kids ministry volunteers? Come on and stand up, even if you only done it one time. Can we give it up for them? Can we get behind them? If you're clapping, that means you're gonna volunteer. Keep clapping. Do you think if we accomplish all these things, we would make a difference in our community? Yeah, I think that we would. Do you think that if we accomplish all these things, it would make a difference in our hearts? Yeah, I think so. Do you think that if we accomplish all these things, people around us would look at us and they'd say, that's what Jesus looks like, and I want that? Of course they would. Because we will be led and motivated and inspired by something that they all want. Compassion. The compassion that reflects the heart of Jesus. Generosity fueled by compassion. Love, grace, patience, warmth, joy, all fueled by compassion. Now, if you read Matthew 8, it says back in verse 1, it says, large crowds followed him. And I read this and I say they followed him because they wanted what he had. They followed him because they wanted his compassion. It captivated them. It drew them in, and they wanted more of him. And see, as we do these things, we will lead people to Jesus in the same way, by pouring ourselves out in love and commitment and service and generosity. And through our compassion and through our work, people will see him and they will know him and they will be restored by him. So by the end of the year, as we sit here next year on this day, when we look back and see all the blessings that God has poured out on our church and on our hearts and in our communities, and we will see lives changed and hearts reshaped, we will know the cause of it. We will know the one who's restored. We will know the one who's redeemed. We will know the one who shaped hearts. Always, only Jesus.